and across the state as these operations continue. Back to you.
And like we said, we'll keep you updated on the very latest on those operations and the dialogue around them, because we know this is a contentious issue. You have folks who are passionate on both sides, those who support it and those who oppose it. So we'll be diving into those conversations shortly. Let's take a quick break, folks. We'll be back in 2 minutes once again with Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina speaking on some of these big topics of the day. Welcome back, folks, to Live Impact News. A quick point of breaking news we want to let you know out of Gastonia, as there was a really large police scene that folks were seeing probably on Trinity Avenue. Just got an update from police saying that there was a scene involving a pedestrian struck by a vehicle, and apparently that vehicle then struck a building. So we've got a crew on the way here. As soon as we can get you a live picture of the scene, we will definitely do that for you. But we've got police saying at this point they're still investigating the circumstances that led to this crash. They say there's no ongoing threat to the public. So more on that to come. With that, we do turn to a big topic of the day, a couple big topics that we're seeing. And we've got South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman joining us right now on Live Impact News. Congressman, thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a busy day.
Glad to be with you, Vanessa.
Well, we want to start off, of course, with the Epstein files movement that we saw, with the bill that passed both the House and the Senate today. And then you actually made a movement yourself as far as introducing this resolution shortly afterwards. But I guess before we get to that, could we get your take on your vote today to release the Epstein files and kind of your reasoning behind it and what your thought process has been regarding the whole situation?
Yeah, Vanessa, the Epstein files, it's been in the news for a good while. The Democrats have pushed this full transparency, which is what the Republicans wanted. And the discharge petition had been out there, which was just a move to bypass committee hearings. But with the bill that passed today, I feel good about it. The time had come to release everything so that we can get this behind us. We've got so many more important things we have to deal with, like health care and like, reducing prices and things that really affect the American people. But I think this time had come. Mike Johnson did a great job in putting it on the floor, and it passed the way it did in a bipartisan manner, which is rare in Congress these days.
Now, I mean, we heard on the Democratic side that there, was some messaging about how the files could have already been released. The president could have done that. We heard some of your colleagues across the aisle had been saying. What is your response to that?
It's not true. I mean, Jamie Comer did a great job of having hearings. It is a process. The problem with the discharge petition was innocent names, and the way it was written, anything and everything could be out, meaning that innocent people who didn't want to be identified. And there, from what our understanding is over 1,000 young women and men that had abuse. And they don't want to have their names splashed all over the paper, nor information given. They are probably in their 40s and 50s now, have families, have children. So it was the right thing to do to take as long as we did. You have to remember, we've been out for 43 days due to the shutdown that the Democrats put on the country. But I'm glad it passed the way it did. I'm glad it passed the Senate. And now it's behind us, and let the evidence take us wherever it leads.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, I guess, wherever it leads, should we come to know any high-profile names, how do you think you would respond and or react, regardless of who those names are and where they might fall maybe on the political spectrum, if at all, people that they might be, known to be in certain circles or whatnot? How do you think you would respond?
It wouldn't matter if they were politically well-known or famous people or not famous. Look, this involved abuse of young girls taken to an island under the guise of modeling agencies and whatever else a depraved mind that Jeffrey Epstein had. This has been going on for 30 or 35 years. And it was President Trump who initially indicted and had Epstein come to trial. But this is where it knows it's not a Democrat issue, it's not a Republican issue. It's protecting the youth in this country and exposing the violations that occurred. And whoever did it, they're going to have to take the heat for it and deal with it accordingly to what happened.
Now, we saw just moments after that vote happened and essentially the dust settling, you introduced a resolution that's somewhat related to the whole Epstein dialogue, and this is regarding Delegate Stacey Plaskett, who we know there's been some reporting recently talking about how she seemed to be texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a hearing back in 2019, and seemingly that played a role into some of her questioning during that hearing. Can you talk about your resolution here, what you hope it accomplishes, and just some of the dialogue, because we were actually streaming some of your discussions this afternoon live in Raw on our feed here. Can you talk about some of the conversations that you've been having with your colleagues about this resolution?
Sure. Representative Plaskett, back in 2019, texted with a Jeffrey Epstein, who's a convicted pedophile. He had spent a couple of years in prison, and he was convicted. She, at a hearing where they were trying to trap Donald Trump, they had Michael Cohen testify, and basically what the text said was gave her questions to ask, like who was the assistant that under President Trump, and he gave her that information. And basically, and each rep gets 5 minutes. The whole time she took whatever Epstein gave her to ask, and Epstein's, I think, goal was to embarrass Donald Trump. It didn't happen, and simply my resolution said that refer it to the Ethics Committee, which is made up of 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and let them find out whatever the facts lead them. This isn't smoke and mirrors; it's actual text from a convicted pedophile. We did call for stripping her of her committee assignments on Select Intelligence Committee, where she gets things that the normal congressman doesn't get and the normal American doesn't get. She shouldn't be sitting on that committee when she is texting with a known criminal. Her judgment wasn't there, and she should be stripped of her committee. And as a ranking member of a subcommittee, she ought to come off that. And she shouldn't get a pass because of what she did. So the facts speak for themselves.
Now, if we could, I wanted to pivot to the Border Patrol operations happening in North Carolina, because we're seeing those expanding. And we know that you joined us previously here on Live Impact to talk about your take on the matter, although we know you're from South Carolina, but South Carolina obviously very close with North Carolina geographically. What is your take on what we're seeing as far as these operations? The fact that they've not only started in Charlotte, but seemingly have moved to the Raleigh area. And at this point, we've seen netted a couple hundred people, at least from the Charlotte side of things.
Well, Vanessa, what Tom Homan and what under the direction of President Trump is doing is taking known criminals, gang members, rapists, pedophiles off the streets of Charlotte. Charlotte is a safer city now. And the protests that I think, when you really dig into it, are paid for by outside groups to protest a group that's keeping them safe. And it makes no sense to me that that's what they're doing. And the fact that the government owes the American people at every level safety. And what the Biden administration did was let 20 million plus immigrants from every nation in without any background checks, and they're doing harm for the American people. I live in Rock Hill, which is close by to Charlotte. I take with me during a lot of my, when I'm speaking, a picture of the little Ukraine girl that was murdered on the subway or the train in Charlotte. Now, the killer wasn't an immigrant, but he was a criminal. And he had been released, been arrested some 40 times, and had 20-some convictions. Most of who Tom Homan is arresting are illegals that have a rap sheet that are a mile long. They should not be roaming the streets. And Charlotte is a safer place now, and Raleigh will be a safer place as well.
I did want to kind of dive a bit deeper. You seem to have some suspicions about some of these protests, and I know that our crews have gone out there and spoken with folks in person, and we can see that these folks are locals and they're tied to different groups. And I just kind of curious to get your take on why you think that these protests could be sponsored by outside groups or people with different motives, and if you have any proof, because we'd certainly like to know if that is happening and maybe these protests are being misrepresented.
What we saw in the riots, what we saw in January 6th, there were groups that had to have a substantial amount of money to carry out, to buy the bricks, to buy the water, there were coordinated attack. George Soros is known to be involved with these fringe groups that basically are trying to overthrow America, and they hate the American system, and they hate, they're behind a lot of other groups that are instigating violence. That's why the judges that he plays a role in, particularly in California and other states, are judges who release criminals and have just a lenient attitude, no cash bail. Very little prison time, conviction after conviction. Police officers are getting tired of arresting the same person over and over again. So I'm sure there's some well-meaning people who just object to what's the raids, but I wonder how they would feel if it was their daughter. I wonder how they would feel if it were their granddaughter or another Lake and Riley. In the murders and the tragedies that take place as a result of illegals in this country. They shouldn't be here, and the president's having to take action to correct it.
Now, as far as the efforts to remove criminals off the streets, we've heard folks who maybe say that they disagree with some of the methods being used here, but they do support in general the removal of criminals, not only off the streets, but out of the country in cases where that is applicable. Diving into some of the numbers, we saw from Homeland Security recently the more than 130 arrests, which we know that number has gone up since this release went out earlier today. But the 130 arrests here in Charlotte, they said that 44 had previous criminal records. And some of them, they said, were driving under the influence, hit and run, assault and battery. They said that 2 arrested were allegedly known gang members. So once again, that's according to Homeland Security. So that's 1/3 of the people who were arrested during the Charlotte operations with previous criminal records, which makes it sound like the other 2/3 did not have criminal records. And we saw with the Chicago operations, I believe the count was 600 arrests, and there were about a dozen or more that were considered to be high risk, really high risk concerning criminals. And so that was, less than 3%. And so for those folks who are kind of struggling to wrap their mind around why use these methods and these operations to this scale to net a relatively large, low percentage rather, of people who are considered high risk, how do you explain that to them? And how do you, I guess, justify that for folks who just maybe don't see eye to eye with you on the matter?
Oh, very simply. What method would they say to use? To round them up, what would they say would need to be done? Tom Holman, and I've had him on our conservative opportunist group speaking. They know where they are. The intelligence knows where the criminals are. That's his main focus. And one is too many. But I'm sure there's probably some ones that if they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. But if they're illegally in the country, they have to go. And I'm sure that if you cite those percentages, it would shock me that if you really delve into them and when they have time to really find out who they are and what they've done, it would most likely tell a different story. But let's say if your figures are right, if they're illegal, they don't have a right to stay here anyway. Kristi Noem, early on, months ago, put out messages all over the country that if they voluntarily volunteered the fact that they were illegal, go back to their country of origin, and then come back in the legal way. That would be one thing. But those who didn't do that, and I think at one time he was offering some bonus money to get them to come to come turn themselves in. It's expensive what they're doing. But my argument would be, if this isn't the right way, tell me what way they think works. And is it not true that taking, let's say 20%, 10% violent criminals off the street, is North Carolina not a safer community? I would argue that it is.
Now, I mean, the other criticism that we're seeing from folks who disagree with the operation also has to do with the fact that we are seeing, U.S. citizens getting caught up in these operations, or folks who are legally allowed to be here in the country. And, these encounters with Border Patrol, have ended up in either arrests with some of these cases. We had a situation where, 2 women are accused of honking their horns to alert people in the area that, Border Patrol was in the area. There was a gentleman who, is legally allowed to be here in the country, who on Saturday had his window smashed by Border Patrol. And so folks are seeing that, and some folks who are disagreeing with that say, is all of this worth this type of collateral damage, if you will? And I'm just kind of curious to hear what you have to say, in response to that.
Well, again, at what price does safety come? What's the alternative? Just leave them? Now, if you were here legally and were taken in, I'm sure you would have your day in court. But if you're here illegally, you did turn yourself in voluntarily, then regardless of what the media says, you pay a price for that, and it's going back to your country of origin. And I would guess to think that if they were caught up in some of these huge raids, that they're going to find some criminal activity. Would there be some casualties that unintended? I'm sure there will be. But the bottom line is Charlotte safer with them off the streets? I would argue they are. And I would argue that the families that have suffered violence, whether it's through the drunk driving that killed someone, or the murders, the rapes, that's they would tell a much different story than a lot of the press is portraying.
The understanding that we have is after North Carolina operations, and probably maybe to some extent while North Carolina operations are still kind of winding down, Border Patrol is set to go to New Orleans next. Are you getting any wind of operations that might eventually happen in South Carolina?
Yes.
What can you tell us about those?
I'm not going to tell you anything. I mean, ICE knows where they are. I'm not going to tell you where I think they're going. I wouldn't do that to them. Look, these people are putting their lives on the line to go into communities. And I don't know when it'll be. but I'm sure that's true all over the country. But to blow your horn like you said the lady was doing, alerting people to go inside and hide, I would never do that. Never would I betray them, because I think they're doing the right thing. And I would again, my question to anybody that objects to it: what do you say? What program should be in place, or what action should be taken to get the people off the streets? And they could be the next victim of these violent crimes and violent activity.
Would you be able to pose to us communities that you think Border Patrol needs to come to in South Carolina?
No, the ones to go to your sheriffs, go to the crime statistics, go to your different communities. If you want to put a reporter out and find out where crimes are happening, let's see what the statistics say. And that's where that hopefully, if in the areas that have high crime rates, they would welcome the ICE agents, particularly if the illegals, a lot of them are causing it. But they're doing such a service for this country, and to get undermined and maligned like they are, it just isn't fair.
Before we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to leave our viewers with on Live Impact News? I know we covered a few topics here, and you've spent a lot
Sure.
of time with us. We appreciate it. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I would just say that I would report the numbers of people that were taken off the streets with criminal records, and I would tell the good people in North Carolina, let them answer the question. Call your sheriff's departments. Call your jail wardens. Ask them, are they happy that they don't have to deal with people that should have never been here, and that while they were here, they abused the system.
South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman, we really appreciate your time here on Live Impact News.
Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate it.